In this next section, I'll make a more complex example of an egg drop canister. This one will take advantage of 123D Make's radial settings to create strips of cardboard protruding from the front that might act as a crumple zone upon impact and protect our egg. While the opposite side, I'll have an air-catching tail that will attempt to create drag and steer the canister so its crumple zone is pointing downwards. All in all, I'll have to be careful not to make it too large, as that could disqualify it from the competition. In order to make this, I'll be using the same sketch tools we are familiar with to draw the components of this canister: an egg holder, a tail, and some spikes. I'll use the revolve tool to create the tail and the egg holder, and I'll use the extrude tool to make the spikes. Then I'll use a circular pattern tool to duplicate these spikes in a circle. Because I'm using the circular pattern tool, I only had to draw one set of spikes. Once I import this into Make, I'll change the dimensions and slicing directions to create the desired effect. I can also clean up the file by deleting unnecessary layers. With that done, all I have to do now is to export it and print it and then assemble it. I'll make this egg holder in much the same way as I did for the last canister. First, I'll use the polyline tool to make two dimensioned guidelines. These dimensions will be the same as the last egg canister I made, or in your case, the same dimensions as your egg. Then, I'll outline it with the spline tool to create our egg shape. After that, I'll use a polyline tool to draw a box around the outside of our egg profile. This will become the cylinder that will hold our egg once we revolve it. Now I'll use the polyline tool to create tail fins. This won't be pretty, but I think it'll get the job done. Alright, this is looking pretty good. Let's revolve this so we can see what our three-dimensional shape will look like. I'll select the Revolve tool from the Create tab, click on our profiles, making sure not to select the egg because I want that to be a hole. Then I'll revolve it, and I'll just type in 360 degrees and push enter. Now, because the solid is kind of obscuring my view, I'm going to change my view mode to orthographic. You can do this just by clicking on the little arrow next to the view cube and clicking on orthographic. Now that I can see what I'm doing, I can sketch our spikes with the polyline tool. I'm just going to do that really fast. I don't want them to stick out too far, but I definitely want them to stick out far enough that they'll have plenty of space to crumple before our egg hits the ground. I'm going to go ahead and select the Extrude tool from the Create tab. This tool works kind of like the Revolve tool. You have to select a profile, and then you can use it to create a three-dimensional solid. We don't have to select an axis because it always just extrudes away from the sketch. I'm going to pull this arrow out so it's extruded 5 millimeters, and then I'll make sure that we're selected on Create New Solid. If it's on Join, it'll add it to the rest of our part, and then we won't be able to move it or copy it by itself. Because we've just extruded out from the sketch plane, it's sticking out in front of it, but I want to push it back so it's actually in line with the center of our egg drop canister. To do this, I select our solid, then I'll select the Move tool from the bottom of the screen, and I'll just drag this arrow back 2.5 millimeters. Because it wants to snap to 2, I'll just go ahead and type in 2.5 and push enter. To use the circular pattern tool, we'll select it from the Pattern tab on our toolbar. Then we need to select our solid we wish to pattern. Make sure to zoom in close to one of the edges and click on it. That way you know you selected the solid, not just one of its faces. Then we need to select an axis. I'll just use the axis we used to revolve the rest of our canister about. With that selected, we can just dial up this number here until we have as many copies as we want. Remember this number though. I'm going to use 6 copies. Lastly, I just want to double check that we haven't made our canister too large. I'm going to measure the top of our sketch and the bottom of our sketch with the measure tool. Luckily it's only 292 millimeters tall, so that's just fine. Also, we'll use this number for the height in 123D Make. I'll just go ahead and export this like I did with the last one, and then I'll open it up in Make. Alrighty, I've already opened it up in Make, and now I'm going to select the sheet size that we'll be using. Once again, I'll just use 8.5 by 14 because that's what my printer does, but double check if you have a laser cutter, what size of cardboard it'll cut, or if you have your own printer, what size of paper it uses. Then I'm going to go ahead and set my dimensions to millimeters and type in the height that we measured in 123D Design. That was about 290 millimeters, so I'll just enter that in and push enter. Next, I'll select radial slices for our construction technique. Notice though that this isn't lined up correctly, so we can't see any of our fins. We're going to have to edit how many radial supports they have. Remember, we made 6 of ours, so we have to use a multiple of 6. I'll just use 6 because 12 is far too many. Okay, now that we only have 6 radial supports, I need to change the slice direction so that way they intersect with the planes we made that were going to be those fingers. I can do this just by grabbing the orange circle while I have slice direction selected. Our spikes still have those horizontal planes of cardboard though. That'll make our structures less strong, and they don't look nice. To delete an entire plane of cardboard at once, all you have to do is select it by clicking on it, and then you click on the delete button. I'll just go ahead and do that with the other layers that I don't need. There's one last layer, and I can actually move that into a position I like better just by selecting it and then clicking it and dragging it down until it moves. And with that last change, I think it's about ready to be exported. Yeah, this is looking pretty good. So now it has our tail that'll hopefully create drag and cause it to fall head first right onto the spikes, which I'm hoping will act like a crumple zone. Alright, all that's left now is to export it and then print it, cut it, and assemble it.